Have you ever said yes to something only to realize afterwards that you didn't really want to do it? You did it because you thought you had to, not because someone forced you, but because you didn't want to make them feel bad, or you felt like you could not say no. You wanted to make them happy and you wanted to give them joy, but yet it wasn't in alignment with who you are. And it's the last thing that you wanted to do. You felt it all throughout your body. Today's conversation is about that gap, the space between compliance and choice, and how often we live in it without even noticing that we are. My guest today is Tiffany Braxton, the author of Consent Comics, an engaging, approachable guide to peer pressure, dating, and real life boundaries. Tiffany is an author, activist, and educator, and the founder of Pennspire, a company built around teaching life skills through engaging education materials. She's also a survivor, and she's turned that experience into a body of work that helps people, teens, parents, couples, anyone. I read it. It totally helped me and made me see, holy smoke, Charla, you know, you're not always honoring someone else's consent. And she helps you see relationships more clearly. She graduated from Northwestern University, lives in California, and is a mom of 4. And you have 4 grandchildren?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, 4 boys. Consent Comics is her first book, and it uses visual storytelling to make an incredibly heavy topic feel approachable, human, and even hopeful.
Yeah.
Which, when I read it, I felt really hopeful. And I was like, I am going to make some changes, especially when it comes to my kids. So, Tiffany, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a great introduction. I should steal some of your words for myself. I'm like, dang, I'm kind of pumped up. I'm like, okay, she sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, no, consent is a real thing. And before I was coming on here, my son said, "What are you doing today?" My middle son, who, is always a cheerleader for this podcast. He said, "What are you doing today?" And I said, "I'm doing an interview." And he asked about what? And I said, consent. And he said, this is such an extremely important topic for us to be having.
Yeah.
So thank you for, number one, I don't know many other people out there spreading this message, for spreading the message, and 2, for coming on and sharing it with other people and making us more conscious in the approach of it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm I'm honestly kind of floored by something that you just said, even consent as hope. And I do think there are some people covering this topic, but I think you just I'm going to have to steal that. Like I said, that consent is hope. I don't think a lot of people are approaching consent like that. I find a lot of times people kind of are giving you a bunch of do's and don'ts. And in this situation, this is what you should do. And in this situation, you shouldn't do this. And it's almost a little bit overwhelming. And you're just how the heck am I ever going to nail this perfectly and be this consensual human being? And for me, Consent Comics was kind of an answer to that. And that, you don't have to get it perfect every time to be someone who practices consent. Nobody practices anything perfectly. And I'm not saying, ever that harm is excusable. But when you are approaching someone and you start manipulating them, and then you say, hold up, I'm starting to manipulate you. I'm so sorry. Or hold up, I'm starting to pressure you, which guilt tripping, our parents, especially moms, are kind of known as the number one guilt trippers. And so we don't really see, ourselves included. Okay. Yeah. But we don't really see how we are really kind of going past someone's consent sometimes. And it's like, just like life is a journey, learning about this and practicing it is a journey. And that's why I created consent comics the way that I did, where it was just like hey, this is a story where someone's boundaries are being, crossed and they have to stick up for themselves, or this is a story where someone is being respected, 100%. That's amazing. But I gave us that in between, right? Where it's called Apologies Matter, where someone is starting to push past a boundary and says, hold up, I guess I'm a human being who's making a mistake, and I'm going to own up for that and, make that change. And I think that's where the hope is, right? The hope is that I don't have to be perfect suddenly, that I can be learning and I can get this wrong sometimes and I can still make it right.
Yeah. And when I read that there's 3 different scenarios in the
Yeah.
book, when I read that, I was like, yeah, apologies matter.
Mm-hmm.
And that moment of consciousness that
Yeah.
comes, that moment of awareness where you say, wait a second, they said no 2 times. I don't have to, and I told you, I sometimes push the boundaries with my kids
Mm-hmm.
3 times, like, I'm like, come to the grocery store with me. And they're like, no. And I'm like, come to the grocery store with me. Maybe we'll get something really good. And they're like, I
Yeah.
don't really want to. And I'm like, come to the grocery store with me. I'll let you have whatever you want. And that's
Yeah.
a form of manipulation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean,
That's
it's hard to see though. It's hard to see because it's never, unless you're really thinking about this kind of like on those deeper value levels, because that's what I always say. It's like, I'm going to steal your consent as hope, but I'm also going to say consent as values. It's
mm,
like, it's not the rules. It's about the respecting someone. It's about the validating someone. It's about, giving them the space to make their decisions and respecting those decisions. I think it's really hard as a parent because we go from, I was talking about my 2.5-year-old grandson, right? Like a lot of it is like, hey, his name's 7, by the way. I'm not saying the number, but it's like 7, don't hit, use, be gentle, 7, and you're like so on top of this little being because there's so many lessons for them to learn, on top of the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. And so, you're just like this, but then as they grow, we always talk about how we kind of need to like
give
let go. And
space.
this is one of those ways that we let go. We let go and we let them be who they're created to be, right? Which is not us.
Yeah.
And, and that can mean something as simple as like, okay, you don't want to go to the grocery store, that's okay.
Yeah. So, okay, let's just break it down. What
Hmm.
is consent?
Yeah.
Like, tell me your definition of consent.
Yeah. So consent for me, I make it really simple. And that is, consent is agreeing to something, but really, like you said in the beginning, really actually wanting to agree to that thing. It's not like there's no contract involved where you just like you have to, like you're buying a car, but you're also signing up for that loan that you don't really want to sign up for. No, you're actually 100% saying, I really want to do this because I actually really want to do this. And it's really hard to just practice that in, everyday life, even because there's so many times where we are giving in and where we've grown up giving in, and so almost like I feel like anyone in their lives has to have that time where they're taking back control of their life and realizing different spaces, whether it be with our own parents, it can even be with our kids. Because, there's the opposite end of like, the kids, are starting to control you, and how you're being and what you're doing. And so that's really what consent is. And I think, I would say the moral values driven definition is really allowing people to fully be themselves and realizing that you have that same right as well.
And there's not a just because you're yourself, I'm going to change my love for
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get mad because you say no. I'm not going to put my disappointment
Hmm.
of what I want on
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
because you said no. So when it comes to, the relationship with yourself, how does learning about consent
Hmm.
change the relationship, the way that you see yourself in
Yeah.
that
I mean,
that
I think,
relationship?
yeah, I think really consent, one, is kind of like the ultimate form of self care,
Mm.
because in order for you to truly be someone who practices consent, you have to make sure that you are actually caring for yourself. Am I caring for my own needs? Am I caring for sometimes my own wants? Am I caring for my own time, my own space that I need? A lot of those require, like, self care often requires boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Boundaries for other people to say, hey, I cut, myself off at this certain time so that I get my me time. Or it can even be boundaries for ourselves, right? I'm cutting off my work time so that I can get, so that I can get my me time and take care of myself. And so I think, it definitely, when you start realizing how much self care requires that, and that it's really like, I mean, because I know you're spiritual, like, our thinking a lot of times in the West, it's very linear.
Linear.
But like, this is circular, like consent and self care. It's just, they're going to keep on going in a circle. And one is going to feed the other continuously. The more you are caring for yourself and meditating and realizing where your body is and the feelings that are in it, you're going to realize, as you're saying yes to someone, you're going to say, oh, my body's not even agreeing with that. What's going on? That came out of my mouth so quickly. But what happened, like you said, with that in between space? And so I think there's that aspect of self care. I also think there's a huge aspect of empowerment. That self empowerment. There's nothing like being able to say that I control every part of my life. I don't control people, but I control every part of my life. And that's kind of like, it's kind of funny because the moment you start trying to control people, you're like, you don't control all of your
Mm-mm.
life because you can't control them. And so when you just kind of leave it as is to your own, personal things, and I think that's, probably the biggest part in that is like, when you have a partner, you realize how much of consent is needed for both people to really like be themselves in that relationship. And really, I love consent because I think that when it's fully practiced, we can learn that maybe that person isn't the right person a lot sooner than when we're kind of starting to give in and people please from the beginning. And then, years later, we're like, wait, where did Tiffany go in this relationship? But if Tiffany was practicing being Tiffany from the beginning, and then there was like the butting heads, hey, we don't actually go together. And that's okay. You go do
Right.
you over here and I'll go do me. So it's like, it's self-care and empowerment, like kind of all embodied in one. And I think a lot of times consent it's made to be so small. It's like, oh, consent. Okay. When someone's about to kiss me, they need to ask. It's like, oh no, gosh, it's like, that's awesome, but it's so much bigger than that.
Yeah, it helps you remember who you are too, it sounds
Hmm.
like. You know that you are a sovereign being, that
Yes.
you do not have to agree to anything
Yeah.
that you don't want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you say that learning consent, and you say this like at the beginning of the book, which was really, really cool, that,
Yeah.
about learning consent is remembering who you are. But you also mention that it's part of healing.
Hmm.
And tell me a
It
little
is.
bit about that, because now, mind you, I think we're always healing. If we're done
Always.
healing, we're
Always.
going back to source, right? But we
Yes.
don't have to get in the healing trap,
Hmm.
of like, oh, I'm healing. I'm in the dark night of the soul. We get,
Right.
we
Right.
get to choose to come out of that by
Yeah.
connecting to source. But
Right.
learning consent, why is learning consent an aspect of healing?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, I mean, and this is partly too, I can tell my own story and then, I know of other people's stories as well. But for me, I'll start with me. As a survivor, I years ago, I was, I always say I was 40 pounds lighter. which I should not be 40 pounds lighter,
No. Your
Yeah,
wrist is tight. Yeah.
it's
Like
a
you have
good
a
size
beautiful
right now.
wrist. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to take any more off of it, right? So
Yeah.
I was 40 pounds lighter. I mean, I was really struggling. I didn't know what was going on with me, to the extent that I do now, as hindsight's 2020, we all know that. And so I was just trying to I was searching for answers of okay, what have I been through? I had the memories that were just coming out of nowhere, where I always think repressed memories are just the most amazing scientific thing, because I mean, I don't know how it works, but you can go from weeks before, if someone had asked, has this ever happened to you? It'd been like, no, not never, never, and then 2 weeks later, it's come to the surface, and it's you're reliving it to the extent to where it's yeah, it happened to me and I just can't even handle it. And so that's kind of where I was really struggling. And I was looking up different things to try and understand my own journey. And I stumbled upon consent, and I was like, what is this? I was only familiar with it when it came to the doctor's office, of giving your consent for them to, send the information to this other doctor, or to perform this surgery or whatever it might be. And so, learning about it was just really eye-opening, because I was like, wow, I should have had the right, and I should have been given the right to give what I call an empowered yes, where it is my yes, and I want to say that yes because I feel empowered in the moment, and yeah, this is totally for me. I'm all for this. And so just in realizing that was that number one was healing. And then, in general with my comics, I went through different stages of healing as I was creating them and reading them. One of them was I had so much blame, as survivors often do. I don't understand, in hindsight, why we blame ourselves, because once you get out of it, you're like, whoa, that was crazy. Why would I ever blame myself for that? That wasn't my choice. That person could have done all these other wonderful, respectful things. That wasn't on me that they treated me like that, so, but I had that blame, and seeing the first version of the comics where someone's being disrespectful, it you see, and you're like, there's no excuse for their behavior. There really isn't, it's they should, if they really cared about that other person, they would have treated them much better. That's it. That's the period. Nothing else to it. There's nothing else to that story. And so I realized, I was I don't need to be blaming myself. If that person had ever cared about me, he would have never done those things to me. And he would have cared that I actually really wanted to do things instead of trying to pressure me. In the moment, he was an incredibly selfish human being who only cared about his wants and his desires, right? So it helped me see that so clearly. And then it also, on the flip side, I needed to see that there was some possibility that there could be someone out there who would treat me well. And at first, when I was writing the version where it's called A Better Way, where, the person is respectful, it was complete fiction. It's I was a fairy, I was a princess waiting for her fairy godmother to just all of a sudden make it happen. This was not real life. I had not really experienced it or seen it. And so I'm writing this fiction, and then I started kind of seeing how simple it was. And I realized, I'm like, okay, well, if it's really that simple to actually respect someone's boundaries, I think that simple man, so to speak, for me, it was a man, that simple man is out there. I truly think that simple man has to be out there, where that's going to happen. And, thankfully I met that simple man, to where I can now say I'm in a relationship where if I say no, there's absolutely no consequence to it. I'm not in some
That's
kind
beautiful.
of doghouse where I feel like I owe them something else later on. There's just no expectation whatsoever of me to do anything beyond what I want to do or what I'm comfortable with. And to be able to say that now, and there's also, and I was just reflecting the other day, there's no fear in the bedroom. And I realized recently how much I had, how uncomfortable and fearful I was in my bedroom. And I say that almost if that's how you feel, I'm so sorry that my words might have brought that up in you to realize, hey, I don't feel safe and completely comfortable in this space where I should feel safe. But like it is possible. And with the right person, they make it an incredibly safe place for you to be. And you know that you don't owe anything in that room suddenly. It's like, it's so hard to be in a relationship where you walk into your bedroom and you're just like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here tonight? What am I going to be pressured into tonight? What am I going to feel uncomfortable about? And so, yeah, those were things that I needed to see and not just be told. And that's something where I've seen it with other people where they, see these comics, and I originally made them for prevention. I have to put that out there. I was like, I don't want other people to go through what I went through. Let me create these. I did not realize that they would lead partly to my own healing. I also didn't realize that they would lead to other people's healings. But that is what I have found a lot, whether it's bringing up some memory that they realize, oh my gosh, like that I should have had this instead of what I did, or like, oh my gosh, that wasn't my fault. Or, oh my gosh, I should have had a real apology here instead of what I received. So it kind of like it's all over the place, but it's really amazing.
It brought up that, oh, this is what it feels like for someone to acknowledge that I said no and they tried again and then they apologized. And
Yeah.
it brought up oh, wow, that, yeah, okay, that is available.
It is.
In the book though, there's no biases of who's the bad guy or
Yeah.
the victim, and it shows everyone that they're able to see themselves
Mm-hmm.
and these scenarios within themselves.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it did that for me. It
Yeah.
showed me that I was, I don't want to say perpetrator, but maybe I have. I mean,
it's a safe place here. You could say perpetrator. We know
I
what you
mean,
mean.
maybe
We know what you mean.
yeah, I'm not I'm whatever perpetrator. I'm going to say
Mhm.
perpetrator, where you don't take no for an answer,
Yeah.
or the person that it made me realize that there were some relationships where I gave in to doing
Mm-hmm.
things that I said I didn't want to do. And they were like, no, but please, can we just do that? Can you just
Yeah.
do that? And I was like, okay, fine. Because I didn't want them to get upset and
Yeah.
I wanted
Yeah.
them. So why is it that there's no biases, no gender, no,
Yeah.
you can't tell who's who, nothing.
Exactly. And that,
Yeah.
that was a huge goal. It was a huge goal.
But I would have to say it still made it easy to follow.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I knew the person that was like, no.
Right.
And then I knew the person that, but it wasn't a masculine, feminine
Mm-hmm.
energy. And it was just very, I guess, non-binary in a
Yeah.
way. Yeah. Yeah. Non-binary.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's exactly what I was going for. I'm so happy you said that. Like that was a huge deal for me. And partly because I come from a Christian background, and I grew up with definitely like male and female, and and I was just like, I hated also seeing that in a lot of relationship and consent teaching, that we were still going male and female, and and putting everybody in their like stereotypical roles, or like all of that. And I wanted to make sure that everybody felt like they were completely welcome in this book in all different ways, whether it was your sexuality, whether it was your gender, whether it was your race. This is kind of where like the spiritual comes in, because I was drawn to an illustrator at the time where, I saw her drawings, but nothing really like stood out in terms of like, oh, she's going to be able to do this task that I need her to do, which was create genderless characters. But I was drawn to her, and I was like, okay, God, I'll go with this, and her name's Addie. And when I contacted her and I said, okay, your first task is genderless characters, she literally said to me, that is my specialty. And I was like, well, that was not in your resume, but
Yeah.
like God knew. And so I went with her. And so that's what you see here. I can show like the people here. This is the human-like character. And I needed someone that was like human-like enough to where you can see like, okay, they've got the arms, legs needed to, show like, oh, this person put their arm around someone when they weren't asking for it or whatever it was. So that was just like, I can never talk enough about how important it was for me to solve that, because I didn't want people to see themselves in like, okay, where the woman's always the one being pushed past the boundary and the man is always doing it, or that it's always a female male couple. Because like you said, when I am approaching it like this, you really do get to see yourself on all sides, and you even get to see yourself sometimes in like the friends who are around. Am I, am I like an enabling friend, or am I the friend who says like, hey, whoa, hold up. That's not cool. Like you should not speak to someone like that or do that, to someone. And that can be whether it's actually in the situation or on the phone later or in a text later, because they're like, even in one story, it's a friend on the text who's like, hold up, you shouldn't be doing it like that,
Right.
And so it really shows it where like consent becomes bigger because you're not seeing it in the little box that you normally see it in with, oh, here's a male and he wants to do XYZ and the female doesn't. And so she's like, uncomfortable or saying no, it just like that makes it so small and it's so much bigger than that. So I'm really happy that you saw that because, even for me, it has changed how I approach friendships. It's changed how I approach my relationship with my parents. It's changed how I approach my relationship with my kids, my grandkids. It's like you kind of see all the lessons that you need to see rather than just a few picked out because you can finally relate to like maybe one of the characters.
Yeah. And in the book, you make it look like, and it is formatted that consent is not just one big decision. It's not one moment.
Yeah.
It is small decisions every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, walk us through that. Like, what do you mean? Because telling my kids, can you please do the dishes?
Mm-hmm.
There's no consent to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, can you take the trash out? There's no consent to that.
Yeah.
Hey, mom, can you give me money? I mean, there's consent to that, right? I can say no,
yeah.
but part of me is there's no consent to that because they do actions that help me out. So how does it show up in small decisions every day?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, you kind of hit it on the head. There are questions that are actual real questions. And then there are questions where, I'm being polite with my kids. Can you empty the dishwasher? They know they need to say yes because they're part of this household and they help out. And that is what everybody does, right? But, like what you said with the grocery store, that's an actual choice that they have, unless it was their job to go help you get groceries. And so that's really why I didn't want to I didn't want to do the rules because I know that everybody's lives are different, and everybody has different actual rules for their homes. And so I think in doing it with the stories, you realize, okay, when do I need to make this an actual choice? And when is this not? Like we could take our kids' appearances. That's a huge one for me, especially for my daughter. I try to make sure that she has every choice imaginable for how she wants to present herself, because I know like all of the beauty standards and everything else tells her certain things about herself and what she needs to do. And so I'm really huge on, I've posted recently about shaving your legs.
Oh my God, I was just about to say it. It was amazing. And when you did it, I was like, kudos. Like, I don't like always shaving my legs. I'll go like a week, 2 weeks without shaving my legs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not because I'm lazy, not because, and the same thing with my armpits too.
Yes.
And not because I don't want to, but because putting the razor on my body, it is like scraping off the skin.
It's irritating.
It's irritating. Nice. It's not nice. And I'm not going to pay for it to go get waxed because that hurts. So,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
but go ahead
Exactly.
and continue with that. That was, yeah, that was so
Yeah.
good
So,
on
and but
that
that's one of
post.
those things where we don't really think about it, right? And it's
Hmm.
not like even in I was thinking about it as people were talking more, even on the comments, like we don't even see kind of like the commercials, even where, maybe it's a Gillette commercial and yeah, okay, someone's shaving their legs, but are they near a friend who maybe like doesn't, and has like some fuzz or something showing, right? Like it's just really it's kind of one or it's just like one choice, and so I wanted to make sure my daughter has every choice that she possibly can, and I think the only time it gets a little sticky is like when there's some safety factor, because we have to be realistic about like, okay, if you go here like this, unfortunately, there are terrible people in this world, right? And so I need to also teach you to be safe. But that's not because you deserve anything like that because of how
No.
you dressed, right? And that would not be taken as a lesson because, oh, you did it like this, what did you expect? Okay, no, like there's none of that. But 100%, I'm all for her like self-expression and what she wants to do. I won't let her get a tattoo at 16. It's that's something that you can't change, but if she wants one at 18, I'm going to support it. If she wants more piercings later on, go ahead and do it. But the thing is, she knows that she can make those decisions about herself. And I think that's just really important, because I'm hoping that if she's making the decisions here in my household, she'll take that same mentality outside. Because we're not even getting to the point where, she might meet someone who's telling her how to dress and how they want her to be presented. I was actually just recently talking with someone who had been like treating a woman who had, she had like everything done up. And she thought this woman wanted everything done up. Turns out, weeks later, this woman comes in and says, I'm so sorry, I've missed my appointments. I'm going through this really hard divorce. All this stuff you see, like he made me do this. Right. And so, like, that lesson where I'm kind of giving my daughter every choice, I'm hoping that she doesn't run into a situation like that where her partner wants her to look like this. And so she starts even like tweaking her body, because that's another aspect of consent. And of course, that's an abusive relationship, as well. So there's I feel like a lot of different types of abuse that really just go past someone's consent and we don't really realize it, and so I'm trying to like kind of let her have the the smaller choices now so that
Hmm.
the bigger choices later will kind of follow suit.
Sometimes, though, and in your book, there is the space where it doesn't have an abuser at all.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
why did you put that story in there that actually there's not an abuser at all? You're just,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm so glad you asked that. That's really personal, actually, too.
Oh, is it?
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I, like I said, I have this really amazing partner now. And he is just like, there's no pressure whatsoever. Like,
So
have we had
beautiful.
miscommunications? Yes. But those were cleared up, and he gave a real apology, and that was changed. But I still found myself with a lot of things in my own head that it didn't matter that I was in this amazing relationship. It mattered that what I had been through, and what I had experienced. And so in being in this relationship, I was like, wow, I still have things to kind of like work through on my own. And so that's the story that you see where it's called Free Thinker. And it's really about like realizing that some of our own thoughts are truly our own thoughts, and that we need to like free ourselves from them, whether it's this expectation of I've been together with this person for this amount of time, so obviously this should be expected of me. I think that's a huge one that we often fall into. Like, okay, well,
Hmm.
it's been months. They've already waited this long. Kudos to them. I need to reward them soon for that. Like, no, it truly is on your own timing. Or it's like feeling like you should want what it is that's being, placed in front of you, or whatever the option is. And That one was actually, I have to give credit to the male education specialist that I had, going through the comics with me, because that's one thing. I had like four different experts going
Mm.
through these comics before I put them in the book, and kind of giving me their opinion as experts in their field. And the male education expert, he was like, a lot of the teen boys that I work with, they feel not pressure from their girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever it is, but they feel pressure from their friends. And they feel like they're supposed to want certain things by certain times in their life. And if they aren't, something's wrong with them. And so, that, even that right there. So it's not even the relationship, it's these outside pressures that start getting to you. It can be your experience, or it can be society, or it can be your friends. And so I'm sure if like I rewatched some of like Sex in the City, I'd probably even see that, like where the friends are more so pressuring someone to say like, oh, come on, that's not a big deal, or oh, come on, you should want that. Like, how could you not already do that? Right. So there's a lot to work through when it comes to consent. It's not really just even in these situations where we're making decisions. It's, where am I getting the information that is brought into these situations?
Mm. Where am I getting the information that is brought into these situations? That's a
Yeah.
really good question. How do parents really open? I think one of a great way of how they can open the conversation is through this book.
Yeah.
But what are other ways that they can open the conversation and really dive in to the topic of consent, and
Hmm.
where am I getting these ideas, and
Yeah.
keeping kids from getting ideas from other people, or making them aware that actually they don't have to want what other kids
Hmm.
tell them that they're supposed to want.
Right, right. Yeah. I think, in general, a lot of what I've seen with my kids is, you're going through life with them, and life usually gives you opportunities to expand and bring a lesson home. Of course, you never want to be that parent where they're like, I'm not going to say anything because she's always going to bring some kind of lesson into this. So there is a balance to that. Like, let's be
Yeah.
real. But, I think that it really starts with making sure that the line of communication is open between you and your child. That can start at a very young age. And that can start with, I think, one, with the sex, your sex talk in the first place, the birds and the bees. That needs to be an ongoing conversation. The old school, either not giving your kids the conversation or thinking it's a one and done, needs to be over with. That is not a one and done. They're going to run into so many things in this life that they'll probably have questions about. And so I've made it very clear, like with my kids and my daughter, especially, because usually the daughters want to come to the mom a little bit more than the sons. But I'm working on my son though, but I'm not going to like force him into that. I will push him into a consent conversation. The sexual stuff, he could, if he wants to get that, from his dad or whatever, that's fine. But, I've made it really clear with my daughter, like, hey, like, if you have questions, if something comes up, if you're uncomfortable about whatever it is, like, you can talk with me. And a lot of times she'll come with, saying something, and she's, doling down like the name of it, and I'll just use the real name. And she's like, oh, okay, cool, mom. Like, that's, I can just, she's like, oh, I can just say it. And I'm like, yes, you can just say it. It's
Yeah, it's not
completely
that big
fine,
of a deal.
and we've even had the conversation of like, when you're ready to have sex, I hope that you will come to me, even if I disagree with when that is. I would much rather know than for you to be sneaking around. And I think that's another aspect of this parenting. It's like, you're not going to get any conversations out of your kid if they feel like they're much better off lying to you than telling you the truth. And so, yeah, it really requires being a lot more flexible and less judgmental, and realizing that overall you want to like prepare them for things more than you want to control when those things will happen in their lives.
Yeah. And you have a page in your book that is all about nonverbal knows,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I found when I was reading that, I was like, huh, this is really making me more aware of
Yeah.
that. What if the other person doesn't receive those verbal or nonverbal cues?
Yeah. So
And
you're saying like,
what are those cues for people?
yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways that we will say no without saying no. I always like to bring it back to our parents because I think that's where it kind of starts, where, you
Yeah.
know, we've got a parent that's kind of a little bit more overbearing or pushy. And sometimes that, you know, exact no doesn't come out of our mouth, but we are looking away. We're rolling our eyes. We're like sighing, you know, we look like the last thing we want to do is what you are putting in front of me. And so, you know, obviously if it's taking out the trash, we should just take out the trash. But if it's other things like, oh, um, one of the things is like, you know, giving a relative a hug, right? Like I'd never force that.
Right.
Thankfully I feel like people are much more aware of that, but that's something where back in the day, you know, everything about what that kid was doing didn't say like, oh, I want to give this relative a hug, right? They would get all stiff, you know, they would look away, they would kind of like sulk over all those things that say no. And so, you know, nonverbal no's can be the things that I've mentioned. It can be fidgeting, it can be glancing down at your phone, looking away, leaning away or moving away, getting stiff, you know, like just even hesitating and, you know, even just like pausing before they even answer, things like that, where it just shows like something about them changed from being really comfortable with this situation to like something's off. And I think, you know, one of the reasons I put that page in there is because I think we're really silly whenever we say like, oh, but that person didn't say no. Like it's just so easy to say no all the time. You know, I still find
Right.
there's times where I'm like, oh, okay, Tiffany, like your consent person, like you should just be like with this no. But I mean, like I've said with everything else, I'm imperfect, right? I'm still growing. I'm still realizing there are different things where I'm like, wow, that made me, oh, like that made me uncomfortable and I was overwhelmed and I didn't respond in this strong way that I wanted to respond. And so, you know, I wanted to make sure that people felt validated in the fact that maybe you didn't get that verbal no out, but I know that you were doing plenty of other things that said no. And if this person one cared or, and you know, I'm going to give like the slim chance also of like the person who just didn't know better because we're not being taught these things, right?
Right.
So
The
I,
verbal
you know,
cues, a lot of times we're not taught the verbal
we're
cues.
not, we're really not, you know. And so like, you know, there's people that are, you know, they were just clueless and they thought like, oh, well, if she didn't want to do this or he didn't want to do this, they would have just said no instead of, you know, knowing like, hey, there are cues to when someone's trying to say no, but it's the words aren't coming to them. And there's also things that you can do to make it very clear that they can say no, you know, where you can say like, are you sure you really want to do this? Right. And usually, you know, I'm hoping that we as a society get to the point where there's not even that gray area that I'm talking about, you know, where the people that care about people will know how to check in and make sure that this is something that someone wants to do. And the people who don't are for sure the ones that don't care. But I can't even say we're there yet because we haven't had clear examples of what that even looks like. I know people
Right.
are talking now about that off-campus show. I don't know if you've seen it.
I
It's on
haven't
it's
I
on
haven't seen it.
Amazon Prime, and so it's like it's a teeny bopper show, and everybody was like, "Oh, you should watch this because you're you know you're all about consent." So I was definitely like working and had it on in the background, but I did catch where I was like, "Wow, this main character, this guy is making sure that this girl really wants to do these things." That you know she's saying she wants to do, and so I thought that was like, wow, we finally got one really wonderful example of
Yeah.
a guy checking in, and you know the moment she even like there was a part where she's like uncomfortable, right, and she's like, and he can tell based on her body language, like she's tensing up, she's like, you know, and he's like, are you sure you want to do this? She's like, yeah, 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 but like he can tell that no, you don't want to do this, right? And so he goes the extra mile and says, no, like we can just do something else. Like you're clearly not comfortable with this, and that's okay. And so just having more of those examples, I feel like even in our society, obviously you get them in my book as well, where like now, like, okay, well, I can do these extra things to make sure I have a more than willing partner where we're both going to enjoy it.
Right. I was thinking whenever you said that, I was like, wait, did they read your book? No. And write the script after your book?
Right, right. Hey, I think there's supposed to be a second season. So if they want to
Yeah.
check it out,
Yeah.
for some more ideas of how to put consent in there, like I'm all for it because I think, like I said, I just think people need to see it. We don't see it enough. We see more of the opposite than anything else. And then we, of course, we do what we see, right? And so that obviously that's one of the reasons I did comics is because you see it, and you can't unsee it once you see it. It was
Mhm.
very hard for me to get back out in the dating world after, working through my comics because suddenly I saw so much disrespect so clearly. It wasn't even funny. I was like, you
Wow.
are reminding me of the, perpetrator character in my books right now, like all these little shady things you're doing and saying it and trying to make me feel like I'm a little girl who just doesn't know any better. Like, one, I experienced it in an actual relationship, and now I feel like I've experienced it multiple times through reading these stories, and I'm like, I'm not here for it. I'm not here for it.
It's so funny that you say that because while I was reading it, my mind was like, I've experienced this before.
Mm-hmm.
I have experienced this and I've done it before.
Yeah.
Like I've done it before where I've like been like, come to the grocery store with me
Yeah.
or let's go on this ride.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go on the ride. I'm like, no, come on, you have to. Not accepting their no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, Tiffany, I love the fact that you're doing this. I think that it's needed. I think the
Mm-hmm.
awareness around it and the level of consciousness,
Yeah.
just raising us to a higher state of consciousness, a higher state of awareness, a higher state of respect for
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
another.
Mm-hmm.
Where and in return, we're respecting ourselves because
Exactly.
we know that just because someone says no to us doesn't mean that like we're a bad person or
Right.
anything. It's
Right.
just that's their no and
Yeah.
it's not what they want to do.
Yeah.
So,
That's really good.
thank you so much for coming on here
Yeah.
and
Thank you.
sharing with me. Do you have if you could give one piece or a couple pieces of advice
Mm-hmm.
to our listeners, um do that if you have some nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah. I think one, I would say just realize also that you don't have to figure this out all on your own. There
Yeah.
are, and I put some resources in my book. If I could rewind, I would probably put the like Psychology Today link where you can find a therapist. But the thing is, even in reading these comics, you might find, and I was already in therapy while I was creating these and reading these, right? So that helped. But you might find that there's some really deep stuff that could be under the surface, whether it's something you've experienced in a relationship, whether it's why am I such a people pleaser, right? And people don't usually come out just being people pleasers. We are, someone has molded us to be a people pleaser. There are experiences that create, people pleasers. And so, you might find that this requires some really in-depth work, and I'm going to tell you, like, you're not alone. You're not like more broken than someone else. We've all had times where we had to go really deep and figure out what is this part of me that doesn't belong in me. And so, yeah, I just really want to encourage people that, if you find that there's deeper work that you need, like there's people that can help you through that. And there are ways to really go dive deep, whether it's like the support sites that I said and the even crisis text line. You can just start texting people, and they'll be there for you and support you through some, if there's dark thoughts that come up. So I always like to say that. And then, if you're wondering too, I have to plug, like, okay, I know they're comics, and I know that is like a medium, like that you're probably like, whoa, comics, really, like comic book. But it's so much more than that. And like I said, I had experts that are, psychologists and that have like doctors before their names. I had Rita Smith, she's a domestic violence expert, right? There were people that made sure that these didn't just come out as comics, and really helped me make that. And so I'm hoping one day that like the fact that it's comics will just become a little bit more commonplace, because people realize what you can teach through a story, which there's nothing new to that. So many religions and different kinds of people, and like growing up, we had stories that taught us a value that stuck with us, right? And that's really what these comics do. They're stories, and they're teaching you values that I hope stick with you, and two of those values would be respecting others, and even more so like that self-respect for yourself.
Yeah, you guys, I definitely highly recommend getting it. I loved it. It was really great. It made me reflect a lot on the person that I am. And I always feel like I can always be better and do better. And
Mm-hmm.
reading that reminded me of how I can do better and
Right.
be better, especially with my kids and my friends and the people that I love. And, um, so thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank
What's
you.
the website? It is consentcomics.com.
Yes,
And if you want to follow her on Instagram, it is I am Tiffany Braxton.
that's correct.
Yeah, and her stuff on Instagram is really good. She just did
I'm
one
working on it.
recently. No, it was really good. I put a lot of my stuff on YouTube. I don't do as
Hmm.
much on Instagram. But the one that you did on Instagram about the person trying to take your purse, and you were like,
Oh yeah.
you didn't ask. Like,
Yeah.
it was funny. So
Yeah.
it's good stuff, and it's good reminders. So thank you for
Hmm.
your work. Thank you
Thank you.
for having that download and
Right.
acting on it and listening to your intuition, and for being vulnerable and sharing your story and sharing your light with everyone. So
Yeah.
I'm so
Thank you.
grateful. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And if you guys like this episode, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, reach out to Tiffany. We're going to have all the information in the show notes so you guys can reach out to her and definitely get the consent comics.
Get it.
And for your teens, for your kids, for your tweens, for your kids, everything. So thank you guys so much. Have a fabulous day.